Listen carefully. Your life is not stuck because of bad luck, bad timing, or other people. Your life is stuck because you have not decided to lead yourself. No one is coming to rescue you. No one is going to hand you discipline, confidence, or clarity. Everything you want sits on the other side of one decision: to take control of your own direction. Leadership is not about influence. Leadership is not about titles. Leadership is about what you do when no one is watching. This audiobook will not motivate you. It will reprogram you. And if you listen properly, you will never see yourself the same way again.
Most people never start because they are waiting. Waiting for approval. Waiting for confidence. Waiting for someone to tell them, yes, now you're ready. That moment never comes. If you are waiting for permission, you are not preparing. You are avoiding responsibility. That's the truth. From the moment you wake up, you are making a choice. You can act, or you can hesitate. You can lead, or you can wait. And every time you wait, you teach yourself something dangerous. You teach yourself that your life belongs to someone else. You have a choice. Most people don't realize how early this habit begins. They were trained into it. As children, they raised their hand. They waited to be called. They waited to be told what was acceptable. And that training never stopped. Now they wait for their boss to approve their ideas. They wait for their partner to support their goals. They wait for society to say it's realistic. That's the key. Self-leaders do not wait to be chosen. They choose themselves. If you need permission, you are not leading. Let's be clear about something. This is not about being reckless. This is not about being rude. This is about understanding a brutal truth. No one is thinking about your life as much as you are supposed to be. Your boss is thinking about results. Your friends are thinking about their own problems. Society is thinking about comfort and conformity. No one is coming to authorize your potential. You don't need their permission. Every time you delay action because someone might disapprove, you shrink. Every time you wait to be validated, you weaken your authority over yourself. And here's the part most people don't want to hear. Indecision feels responsible, but it is just fear wearing a professional mask. It's not about caution. It's about courage. You have a choice. Look at your life right now. Where are you waiting? Waiting to start the project. Waiting to set boundaries. Waiting to change your routine. Waiting to speak honestly. Waiting is not neutral. Waiting is a decision. And it always costs you more than action ever will. If you need permission, you are not leading. Self-leaders move first. They adjust later. They don't ask, will this work? They ask, what happens if I don't try? That's the difference. Here is the rule you must internalize. You are allowed to begin before you feel ready. You don't need confidence first. You don't need approval first. You don't need certainty first. That's the key. Confidence is built after action, not before it. Clarity comes from movement, not contemplation. You have been waiting because you think hesitation protects you. It doesn't. It traps you. And the longer you wait, the heavier the decision becomes. You start telling yourself stories. I need more information. I need better timing. I need support. No. What you need is self-command. It's not about talent. It's not about luck. It's not about motivation. It's about discipline. You don't need their permission. Here's the behavior change. Listen carefully. Stop asking people what they think before you act. Act first, then let reality give you feedback. Stop explaining your goals to people who haven't earned the right to comment. Silence protects momentum. Stop rehearsing imaginary rejection. It hasn't happened. You're punishing yourself for a future that doesn't exist. That's the key. Leaders don't move when it's comfortable. They move when it's necessary. And necessity is defined by standards, not emotions. You have a choice. Right now, your mind will resist this message. It will say, "But what if I fail?" Good. Failure is data. Waiting is decay. Failure teaches you how to adjust. Waiting teaches you how to doubt yourself. If you need permission, you are not leading. Let's raise the standard. From this moment forward, you operate under a new rule. If something aligns with your values and long-term goals, you act. No vote required, no committee meeting in your head. You decide. You execute. You refine. That is self-leadership. And understand this, people will question you after you move. They always do. That doesn't mean you were wrong. It means you stepped ahead of them. You don't need their permission. Most people criticize action because it exposes their inaction. Your movement makes their waiting uncomfortable. That's not your problem. Your responsibility is not to be liked. Your responsibility is to be aligned. Aligned with your standards. Aligned with your future self. Aligned with the version of you that doesn't hesitate. You have a choice. This chapter is not about aggression. It's about authority. Personal authority. The authority to say, "This is my life, and I move when I decide." Once you internalize that, everything changes. Your posture changes. Your voice changes. Your pace changes. Because leaders don't ask permission to lead themselves. They just do it. If you need permission, you are not leading. And now that you understand this, hesitation is no longer innocent. You see it for what it is. So here's the transition. Pay attention. You've learned to stop waiting. You've learned to move without approval, but movement without structure collapses. You've stopped asking for permission. Now you must learn what actually builds trust in yourself. That's the key.
Most people think confidence is something you find. They think it appears one day, after success, after praise, after validation. They are wrong. Confidence is not discovered. Confidence is built. And it is built the same way every time, through discipline. That's the key. You have a choice. You can wait to feel confident, or you can do the work that creates confidence. One path keeps you stuck. The other changes your identity. Confidence does not come from belief. It comes from proof. Proof that you do what you say you will do. Proof that you keep promises, especially the small ones. Proof that you can trust yourself under pressure. Every kept promise builds authority inside your own mind. Every broken promise destroys it. That's the key. Look at your life honestly. Where is your confidence low? Is it your body, your work, your focus, your discipline? Now ask the real question. Where have you been inconsistent? Because confidence does not disappear randomly. It erodes. One skipped commitment at a time. One excuse at a time. One moment of, "I'll do it tomorrow." You have a choice. Most people try to fix confidence with words, affirmations, motivational videos, positive thinking. That's not leadership. That's negotiation with weakness. It's not about belief. It's about discipline. You don't become confident by telling yourself you're capable. You become confident by proving it. Confidence is built, not discovered. Self-leaders understand this early. They don't ask, "Do I feel like it?" They ask, "What did I commit to?" Then they execute. Not perfectly, not dramatically, but consistently. That's the key. Discipline is not intensity. It's reliability. Anyone can go hard for a day.
Anyone can feel inspired for a week. Leaders show up when motivation disappears. And every time they do, something important happens internally. Their mind takes note. It says, I can trust this person. That trust becomes confidence. You have a choice. Right now, your confidence level is a reflection not of your potential, but of your track record. If you don't trust yourself, your mind won't give you confidence. Why would it? Confidence without discipline would be dangerous. So your mind withholds it. That's the key. Here is where people get it wrong. They think discipline is punishment. They think it's restrictive. They think it takes something away. In reality, discipline gives you confidence. It gives you self-respect. It gives you authority. Discipline is freedom. Because when you are disciplined, you don't rely on moods. You don't rely on external motivation. You don't rely on approval. You don't need their permission. You trust yourself. And that changes how you walk, how you speak, how you decide. Confidence is built, not discovered. Now let's make this practical. Here is the behavioral shift you must make. Stop making large promises to yourself. Start making small, non-negotiable commitments. Daily commitments, boring commitments, unimpressive commitments. Wake up when you said you would. Train when you said you would. Work when you said you would. Not because it's exciting, but because you said so. That's the key. Your brain does not reward intention, it rewards completion. Every completed action deposits trust. Every skipped action withdraws it. Over time, the balance shows. You either feel strong or you feel uncertain. You have a choice. And listen carefully, this matters. You don't rise to confidence, you earn it. And the currency is discipline. It's not about talent. It's not about charisma. It's not about how others see you. It's about whether you keep your word to yourself. That's the key. Most people want confidence before action. Leaders act first and let confidence catch up. You don't wait to feel ready. You build readiness through repetition. Confidence is built, not discovered. Here's another hard truth. If you lie to yourself long enough, you stop believing yourself. Every excuse you accept weakens your internal authority. Every shortcut reinforces doubt. That's why discipline must be non-emotional. You don't debate it. You don't analyze it. You don't justify skipping it. You execute. That's leadership. You have a choice. Start today by lowering the volume of promises, but raising the standard of execution. Do less, but do it every day. Because consistency compounds, and confidence compounds faster than anything else. This is how self-leaders are built. Not through hype, not through luck, but through daily proof. Confidence is built, not discovered. And once you understand this, you stop chasing confidence. You start manufacturing it. Now, here's the transition. Listen closely. You've stopped waiting for permission. You've learned that discipline creates confidence. But there is still one thing that derails most people. They let emotions take control. They let feelings dictate actions. And leaders don't live that way. You've built discipline. Now you must learn how to command yourself when emotions rise. That's the key. Most people think they are in control of their lives. They're not. They are in control of their feelings, and their feelings are in control of them. That's the truth. Emotional obedience is the fastest way to lose control of your life. Every time you ask, "How do I feel?" before you act, you hand over authority. Every time you wait for motivation, you delay progress. Every time you let discomfort decide, you shrink your future. You have a choice. You can be led by emotion, or you can lead through it. That's the key. Feelings are not facts. They are not instructions. They are temporary signals passing through your body. But most people treat them like orders. I don't feel like it. I'm not in the mood. I don't feel ready. And just like that, the day is decided. The habit is skipped. The standard is lowered. Feelings are signals, not instructions. Leaders understand this early. They don't wait to feel disciplined, they act according to standards. Standards don't change with mood. Standards don't negotiate with fear. Standards don't disappear when things get uncomfortable. That's the difference. You have a choice. Right now, your feelings will try to convince you they deserve control. They will sound reasonable. They will sound logical. They will say, rest today. They will say, you've done enough. They will say, tomorrow will be better. Sometimes they are right, but most of the time they are protecting comfort, not growth. That's the key. Here's the dangerous lie most people believe. If I don't feel like doing it, I shouldn't do it. That belief destroys discipline. It destroys consistency, and eventually it destroys self-respect. It's not about feelings, it's about discipline. Leaders don't eliminate emotions, they outrank them. They acknowledge the feeling, then they act anyway. Feelings are signals, not instructions. Let's make this clear. Your feelings will never line up perfectly with your goals. If they did, success would be common. Discomfort is the price of growth. Resistance is the signal that you're doing something meaningful. But most people interpret resistance as danger. That's the key. Your body says, this is uncomfortable. Your mind translates it as stop. A leader translates it as pay attention, but proceed. You have a choice. When discomfort appears, you can retreat, or you can recognize it as part of the process. Discipline does not mean ignoring signals. It means refusing to obey them blindly. You don't need their permission, and you don't need your feelings' approval either. Here's the behavioral shift you must make. Stop asking, what do I feel like doing? Start asking, what does my standard require? That's the key. Standards are decided in advance, not in the moment, not under pressure, not when emotions are loud. You decide your standards when you are calm, when you are rational, when you are thinking long-term. Then, when feelings spike, the decision is already made. You execute. Feelings are signals, not instructions. This is how leaders stay consistent. They don't rely on motivation, they rely on structure. They don't negotiate with emotion, they follow protocol. You have a choice. Right now, your life reflects the standards you enforce when you don't feel like it. Anyone can perform when they're motivated. Anyone can show up when they're inspired. Leaders show up when they're tired, when they're bored, when they're uncomfortable. That's the key. Here's another truth most people avoid. If you let emotions lead, they will always choose the easiest path. And the easiest path never leads where you want to go. Comfort feels safe. Discipline feels threatening. But only one builds the future you say you want. It's not about mood, it's about mastery. Feelings are signals, not instructions. Now, let's get practical. When a feeling shows up, fear, resistance, laziness, you do three things. First, you label it. This is discomfort. This is resistance. This is fear. Labeling removes its power. Second, you pause, not to debate, not to analyze, but to breathe. A calm nervous system restores authority. Third, you act according to standard, not according to feeling, according to commitment. That's the key. This process turns emotional chaos into disciplined response. Over time, something changes. Your feelings stop screaming because they realize they are no longer in charge. You have a choice. And here's the irony. When you stop obeying feelings, they become more stable. When you stop chasing motivation, discipline creates momentum, and momentum creates confidence. That's the key. Most people think emotional control means suppression. It doesn't. It means hierarchy. Your values outrank your feelings. Your standards outrank your comfort. Your long-term vision outranks your momentary mood. You don't need their permission, and you don't need emotional approval either. Leaders feel fear and act. Leaders feel doubt and execute. Leaders feel resistance and move forward. Feelings are signals, not instructions. Once you internalize this, you stop being reactive. You stop being pulled around by internal weather. You become steady.
predictable to yourself, reliable to your goals. And that reliability changes everything. You have a choice. Every day you decide who is in charge, your emotions or your standards. One leads to inconsistency, the other leads to self-respect. Now here's the transition. Listen carefully. You've learned to stop waiting for permission. You've learned that discipline builds confidence. You've learned that feelings do not get to give orders. But there is still a hidden enemy, one that quietly drains momentum. Indecision. You hesitate, you overthink, you delay. You've mastered emotion. Now you must master decision-making. That's the key.
Most people are exhausted before they even begin. Not because they work too hard, but because they decide too much. They wake up already negotiating what to do, when to do it, whether to do it at all. That mental friction drains momentum. That's the key. Decision fatigue is invisible, but it is deadly. Every choice you delay steals energy. Every option you reconsider weakens commitment. Every internal debate trains hesitation. You have a choice. You can live in constant decision-making, or you can decide once and execute daily. Decide once, execute daily. Self-leaders understand this rule. They do not redecide their standards every morning. They do not renegotiate commitments every afternoon. They lock decisions early. Then they move. That's the difference. Most people think procrastination comes from laziness. It doesn't. It comes from unresolved decisions. When the brain has too many open loops, it freezes. When everything is optional, nothing gets done. That's the key. If you want consistency, remove choice. You have a choice. Right now, look at your life. Where are you redeciding the same thing every day? Should I work out today? Should I focus today? Should I eat better today? Should I do the hard thing today? Those questions are the problem. Leaders don't ask them. They already decided. Decide once, execute daily. Decision is leadership. Execution is discipline. And discipline is what moves your life forward. It's not about motivation. It's not about mood. It's not about inspiration. It's about removing friction. That's the key. Every time you delay a decision, you pay interest. In stress, in doubt, in lost momentum. And the longer you wait, the heavier it feels. That's why small decisions feel big. You've postponed them too long. Self-leaders act early when the decision is light. They don't wait until it becomes emotional. You have a choice. Most people burn energy deciding what to do. Leaders save energy for doing. They create rules. Rules eliminate debate. For example, I train every weekday at 7. No discussion. I start work at the same time every day. No negotiation. I don't check my phone until the task is complete. No exception. That's the key. Rules create freedom. Because once the rule is set, execution is automatic. Decide once, execute daily. Here's where people get stuck. They want to keep options open. They want flexibility. They want to see how they feel. That's not flexibility. That's avoidance. It's not about freedom. It's about discipline. And discipline requires closure. You close the decision. Then you move on. You don't need their permission, and you don't need your emotions to agree. You already decided. That's the power. Here's a hard truth. If you redecide something every day, you haven't decided it at all. You're just postponing leadership. You have a choice. Let's make this practical. Today, you identify 3 recurring decisions that drain you. Not 10, not everything. 3. One related to your body, one related to your work, one related to your focus.
Then you decide once. You write the decision down. You make it clear. You remove ambiguity. Not, "I'll try." Not, "I'll see." I do this at this time every day. That's the key. Once the decision is made, your job changes. You are no longer a thinker. You are an executor. Execution does not require confidence. It requires obedience to your own decision. And every day you execute, something powerful happens. Your mind stops questioning. Your energy stabilizes. Your momentum builds. Decide once, execute daily. This is how self-leaders protect energy. They don't waste it on internal arguments. They don't argue with themselves. They follow orders from their higher standard. You have a choice. Right now, your life reflects the quality of your decisions and the consistency of your execution. Not your intelligence, not your potential, your follow-through. That's the key. And understand this. Execution compounds. 1 day of execution feels small. 10 days feel different. 30 days changes identity. But only if the decision stays closed. The moment you reopen it, momentum leaks. That's why leaders hate maybe. Maybe is mental poison. Maybe invites delay. Maybe invites negotiation. Maybe invites weakness. Decide once, execute daily. Another truth most people avoid. You don't need better decisions, you need fewer decisions. Simplify. Eat the same meals. Train at the same time. Work in the same structure. Boring is powerful. Boring removes friction. Boring frees energy. Boring builds consistency. It's not about excitement, it's about execution. You have a choice. Stop romanticizing flexibility. Start respecting structure. Structure does not trap you. Indecision does. That's the key. Leaders don't make their lives harder than necessary. They remove unnecessary choices so they can dominate the important ones. And here's the final piece. Once you decide once and execute daily, your self-trust increases. Because you are no longer unpredictable to yourself. You know what you will do because it's already decided. That stability creates confidence. That confidence fuels momentum. And momentum changes everything. Decide once, execute daily. Now here's the transition. Listen carefully. You've learned to stop waiting for permission. You've learned to build confidence through discipline. You've learned that feelings don't give orders. You've learned to eliminate decision fatigue. But there is still one place where most people collapse. They let their private standards slide. They perform in public, but decay in private. You've mastered execution. Now you must master self-respect. That's the key.
Most people care too much about how they look in public, how they sound, how they are perceived, how they are judged. Very few people care enough about how they live in private. That's the problem. Public success is always preceded by private standards. Always. How you live unseen defines how you perform seen. That's the key. You have a choice. You can manage your image, or you can build your identity. One impresses people. The other builds power. Self-respect does not come from applause. It comes from alignment. Alignment between what you say you value and what you actually do when no one is watching. That's the truth. Most people perform when eyes are on them. They show discipline when they're being evaluated. They show effort when there's recognition. But alone, they relax standards. They cut corners. They make excuses. And then they wonder why they feel weak. You have a choice. What you tolerate alone becomes your future identity. Not what you post, not what you promise, not what you talk about.
what you tolerate. That's the key. Every private compromise teaches you something about yourself. It says, my standards are flexible. It says, I don't really mean what I say. It says, comfort outranks integrity. Over time, those lessons compound, and self-respect erodes quietly. You don't lose it all at once. You lose it in private moments. Skipped commitments, lowered standards, silent excuses. How you live unseen defines how you perform seen. Leaders understand this. They don't wait for accountability. They don't need supervision. They don't require pressure. They bring standards with them, everywhere. That's the difference. You have a choice. Right now, ask yourself this question honestly. Who are you when no one is watching? Not who you want to be, not who you pretend to be, who you actually are. That answer explains everything. Your confidence level, your consistency, your self-trust. That's the key. Self-respect is not built by doing impressive things occasionally. It's built by doing the right things consistently, especially when they're boring, especially when they're inconvenient, especially when no one will ever know. It's not about intensity. It's about integrity, and integrity lives in private. You don't need their permission. You don't need recognition. You need standards. Here's the hard truth most people avoid. If you don't respect yourself in private, you will always seek respect in public. You'll chase validation. You'll crave approval. You'll depend on external feedback to feel worthy. That's not leadership. That's dependency. It's not about image. It's about discipline. Self-leaders reverse the equation. They build self-respect first. Then public confidence follows. How you live unseen defines how you perform seen. Let's make this practical. Here is the behavioral shift you must make. Stop asking, will anyone notice? Start asking, does this align with my standard? That's the key. You clean up because it's your space. You train because it's your body. You prepare because it's your responsibility. Not because someone is watching, because you are. You have a choice. Every private moment is a vote for discipline or a vote for decay. And the scary part, no one else sees the votes, but you feel the results. Confidence or doubt, strength or weakness, clarity or shame. Self-respect is quiet but powerful. It changes how you speak, how you walk, how you decide, and it all starts alone. How you live unseen defines how you perform seen. Here's another truth. If your standards disappear in private, they were never real. They were performative. Real standards don't require an audience. They require commitment. You have a choice. Start tightening your private life. Not dramatically, not perfectly, but deliberately. Make your bed. Finish the task. Honor the commitment. Small acts, daily acts, unseen acts. That's the key. Private discipline builds internal authority. And when you have internal authority, you stop seeking external validation. You don't need their permission. You don't need recognition. You need standards. Here's the hard truth most people avoid. If you don't respect yourself in private, you will always seek respect in public. You'll chase validation. You'll crave approval. You'll depend on external feedback to feel worthy. That's not leadership. That's dependency. It's not about image. It's about discipline. Self-leaders reverse the equation. They build self-respect first. Then public confidence follows. How you live unseen defines how you perform seen. Let's make this practical. Here is the behavioral shift you must make. Stop asking, will anyone notice? Start asking, does this align with my standard? That's the key. You clean up because it's your space.
You train because it's your body. You prepare because it's your responsibility. Not because someone is watching, because you are. You have a choice. Every private moment is a vote for discipline or a vote for decay. And the scary part, no one else sees the votes, but you feel the results. Confidence or doubt, strength or weakness, clarity or shame. Self-respect is quiet but powerful. It changes how you speak, how you walk, how you decide, and it all starts alone. How you live unseen defines how you perform seen. Here's another truth. If your standards disappear in private, they were never real. They were performative. Real standards don't require an audience. They require commitment. You have a choice. Start tightening your private life. Not dramatically, not perfectly, but deliberately. Make your bed. Finish the task. Honor the commitment. Small acts, daily acts, unseen acts. That's the key. Private discipline builds internal authority. And when you have internal authority, you stop seeking external validation. You don't need their permission. You don't need recognition. You need standards. Here's the hard truth most people avoid. If you don't respect yourself in private, you will always seek respect in public. You'll chase validation. You'll crave approval. You'll depend on external feedback to feel worthy. That's not leadership. That's dependency. It's not about image. It's about discipline. Self-leaders reverse the equation. They build self-respect first. Then public confidence follows. How you live unseen defines how you perform seen. Here's another truth. If your standards disappear in private, they were never real. They were performative. Real standards don't require an audience. They require commitment. You have a choice. Start tightening your private life. Not dramatically, not perfectly, but deliberately. Make your bed. Finish the task. Honor the commitment. Small acts, daily acts, unseen acts. That's the key. Private discipline builds internal authority. And when you have internal authority, you stop seeking external validation. You don't need their permission. You don't need recognition. You need standards. Here's the hard truth most people avoid. If you don't respect yourself in private, you will always seek respect in public. You'll chase validation. You'll crave approval. You'll depend on external feedback to feel worthy. That's not leadership. That's dependency. It's not about image. It's about discipline. Self-leaders reverse the equation. They build self-respect first. Then public confidence follows. How you live unseen defines how you perform seen. Here's another truth. If your standards disappear in private, they were never real. They were performative. Real standards don't require an audience. They require commitment. You have a choice. Start tightening your private life. Not dramatically, not perfectly, but deliberately. Make your bed. Finish the task. Honor the commitment. Small acts, daily acts, unseen acts. That's the key. Private discipline builds internal authority. And when you have internal authority, you stop seeking external validation. You don't need their permission. You don't need recognition. You need standards. Here's the hard truth most people avoid. If you don't respect yourself in private, you will always seek respect in public. You'll chase validation. You'll crave approval. You'll depend on external feedback to feel worthy. That's not leadership. That's dependency.
Every time you hesitate, something happens inside your mind. A conversation starts, a debate, an argument, a negotiation. And here's the truth most people don't want to accept. Every internal debate strengthens the weaker voice. That's the problem. Weakness doesn't need to win outright. It just needs a discussion. That's the key. You have a choice. You can command yourself, or you can negotiate with yourself. One builds leadership, the other builds excuses. Leadership requires swift, non-emotional self-command, not analysis, not justification, command. The first answer is the leader's answer. Let's be clear. This chapter is not about being harsh. It's about being decisive. Weakness thrives in ambiguity. Strength thrives in clarity. And negotiation creates ambiguity. You already decided to train. You already decided to work. You already decided to change. So why are you still debating? Because weakness knows one thing. If it can delay you, it can defeat you. That's the truth. You have a choice. The moment you feel resistance, you must recognize it for what it is. Not logic, not reason, resistance. And resistance does not deserve a vote. Feelings are signals, not instructions, and resistance is just a signal that growth is present. The first answer is the leader's answer. Here's the pattern most people live in. They feel resistance, they pause, they think, they justify, and by the time they finish thinking, the moment is gone. Momentum dies quietly. That's the key. Negotiation is weakness pretending to be intelligence. It sounds thoughtful, it sounds careful, it sounds reasonable, but it always leads to the same outcome: delay, avoidance, regret. You don't need their permission, and you don't need permission from your weaker self either. Leaders move when the command is given, and the command comes from standards, not emotion. You have a choice. Right now, think about where you negotiate the most: getting out of bed, starting work, doing the uncomfortable task, ending distractions. Those are not decision problems. Those are obedience problems. You already know what to do. You just keep debating whether you'll do it. That's the key. The solution is simple but uncomfortable. You eliminate the conversation. No internal committee, no vote, no discussion. You decide once, then you obey. The first answer is the leader's answer. This is how self-command is built, not by overpowering yourself, but by responding immediately to your own direction. Speed matters. The longer you wait, the louder weakness becomes. Action silences negotiation. That's the key. Here's the rule you must adopt. When a task aligns with your standard, you act within 5 seconds. Not after thinking, not after preparing emotionally, immediately. Because hesitation is weakness recruiting support. You have a choice. You can move fast and feel resistance briefly, or you can negotiate and feel regret later. One costs seconds, the other costs years. Leadership requires swift, non-emotional self-command. And understand this, discipline is not about intensity, it's about obedience to your own orders. If you don't obey yourself, why would your mind respect you? Every time you override your own command, authority erodes. That's the key. Most people think strength is loud. It's not. Strength is quiet execution. No speech, no drama, no explanation, just action. The first answer is the leader's answer. Let's make this practical. From today, you adopt a non-negotiation rule. When you decide something matters, it is closed. No revisiting, no emotional appeals, no bargaining. You feel resistance? Good. You move anyway, because resistance is temporary, regret is permanent. You have a choice. Weakness will always try to sound reasonable. It will say, just this once. It will say, you deserve rest. It will say, tomorrow will be better. And sometimes rest is valid. But here's the difference.
Leaders schedule rest. Weakness improvises excuses. That's the key. Rest is intentional. Avoidance is emotional. Leaders know the difference. They don't negotiate in the moment. They follow the plan. The first answer is the leader's answer. This is where most people break. They want freedom from structure, but structure is what gives freedom. When you remove negotiation, you remove stress. No decision fatigue, no guilt, no self-argument, just execution. You have a choice. Either you control your actions or your impulses will. And impulses always choose comfort. Leadership never does. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline to your own orders. Every time you obey your first decision, you strengthen your authority. Every time you negotiate, you weaken it. And over time, that difference becomes your identity. Strong or inconsistent, decisive or distracted. You don't need their permission, and you don't need to feel ready. You need to act. The first answer is the leader's answer. Now listen carefully. This chapter is not about being perfect. You will still fail sometimes. You will still slip. But you will no longer pretend that negotiation is harmless. You will see it clearly. And once you see it, you can stop it. That awareness alone changes behavior. You have a choice. Command yourself or keep debating. One builds leaders, the other builds excuses. Now here's the transition. Pay attention. You've stopped waiting for permission. You've built confidence through discipline. You've learned to command emotions. You've eliminated decision fatigue. You've raised private standards. You've stopped negotiating with weakness. But there is still one force shaping your behavior every day. Your environment. The people you're around, the spaces you live in, the inputs you consume. You've mastered self-command. Now you must master what surrounds you. That's the key.
Most people think success is about willpower. It's not. Willpower is unreliable. Willpower is emotional. Willpower runs out. Your environment does not. That's the key. Your surroundings shape behavior more than willpower ever will. Every room you enter trains you. Every object you see influences you. Every person around you reinforces something, good or bad. You have a choice. You can fight your environment every day, or you can design one that works for you. Self-leaders choose design. What surrounds you shapes you. Look at your life honestly. Your phone, your desk, your room, your social circle. Are they training discipline or breaking it? Because your environment is always teaching you something. It teaches you what is normal. It teaches you what is acceptable. It teaches you what effort level is required. That's the key. Most people rely on motivation to overcome bad environments. That's a losing strategy. If your phone is always within reach, distraction wins. If junk food is always available, discipline loses. If negative people surround you, standards drop. It's not about character, it's about conditioning. You have a choice. Leaders don't rely on self-control. They remove temptation. They don't test discipline, they automate it. That's the difference. What surrounds you shapes you. Here's a hard truth. If your environment stays the same, your behavior will eventually return to baseline. No matter how inspired you feel today, no matter how motivated you feel right now, environment always wins in the long run. That's the key. This is why so many people fall off. Not because they are weak, but because they return to environments that reward weakness. Same couch, same scrolling, same conversations, same routines. And then they blame themselves. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. And discipline needs structure. You don't need their permission. You need to redesign your surroundings.
Let's make this practical. Here is the shift you must make. Stop asking, how do I stay disciplined? Start asking, how do I make discipline automatic? That's the key. Automatic discipline comes from environmental cues. If your gym clothes are laid out, training is easier. If your workspace is clean, focus is easier. If your phone is out of the room, concentration is easier. You have a choice. You can keep relying on effort, or you can start relying on systems. Leaders choose systems. What surrounds you shapes you. Another truth most people avoid: your environment includes people, and people normalize behavior. If everyone around you complains, complaining feels normal. If everyone around you avoids effort, avoidance feels safe. If everyone around you is undisciplined, discipline feels extreme. That's the key. You don't rise to your goals, you sink to your environment. That's why self-leaders are selective. Not arrogant, not judgmental, intentional. They protect their standards. You have a choice. You don't need to cut everyone off, but you do need to limit exposure. Less time with people who drain energy, more time with people who reinforce standards, and more time alone if necessary. Solitude is better than sabotage. You don't need their permission. Now let's talk about physical space. Cluttered space creates cluttered thinking. Chaotic space creates reactive behavior. If your environment is loud, your mind stays loud. That's the key. Leaders simplify. They remove unnecessary noise. They reduce visual distraction. They create clear zones. A place to work, a place to rest, a place to train. Each space has a purpose. Each purpose reinforces behavior. What surrounds you shapes you. Here's the mistake most people make. They try to change everything at once. That fails. Leadership is precision. You change one environment at a time. Start with the one that controls your mornings or the one that controls your evenings. Those bookends decide your discipline. You have a choice. Fix your mornings or fix your nights. Remove friction, add structure. That's the key. Another critical shift. Stop keeping reminders of who you used to be. Old habits hide in plain sight. Apps you don't need. Objects tied to distraction. Items connected to bad routines. If you keep them, you're voting for relapse. It's not about nostalgia. It's about discipline. Remove what doesn't serve the standard. You don't need their permission. Leaders are ruthless with environment because they respect their future. They know one weak setup can undo months of effort. What surrounds you shapes you. Now understand this. Environment is not just physical, it's digital. Your feeds, your notifications, your constant inputs. If you are always consuming, you are rarely creating. If you are always reacting, you are rarely leading. That's the key. Leaders control inputs. They decide what enters their mind. They limit exposure to noise. They schedule consumption, if at all. You have a choice. Scroll by default or design intentional silence. Silence strengthens focus. Focus strengthens discipline. And discipline builds freedom. What surrounds you shapes you. Here's the final truth of this chapter. If you keep putting disciplined behavior in undisciplined environments, you will eventually lose. Not because you failed, but because you ignored reality. Environment is the silent partner in every habit. So make it work for you. Design it, simplify it, protect it. You don't need more motivation. You need better surroundings. You have a choice. Change your environment and behavior follows. Ignore it and you will fight yourself forever. That's the key. Now here's the transition. Listen carefully. You've stopped waiting for permission. You've built confidence through discipline. You've mastered emotion. You've eliminated decision fatigue. You've raised private standards. You've ended negotiations with weakness. You've designed your environment. But there is still one thing that creates confusion even in strong systems: lack of clarity. You hesitate because you're unsure. You stall because you're waiting to feel clear. You've built structure. Now you must understand a deeper truth. Clarity does not come before action. That's the key.
Most people say the same thing. I just need more clarity. I'm trying to figure it out. I'll act once I'm sure. That sounds responsible. It's not. Waiting for clarity before acting is a hidden form of fear. That's the truth. You have a choice. You can wait until things feel clear, or you can move and let clarity catch up. Leaders choose movement. Clarity follows action, not thought. That's the key. Most people believe clarity is a prerequisite. They think understanding comes first. They think certainty must appear before commitment. That belief keeps them stuck. Because clarity does not come from thinking, it comes from doing. Movement creates information. Stillness creates confusion. That's the difference. You have a choice. Right now, look at where you feel uncertain. Career, health, direction, purpose. Ask yourself this honestly. Have you been moving or have you been waiting? Because confusion is rarely caused by lack of intelligence. It's caused by lack of engagement. You don't need more thinking. You need more action. That's the key. Self-leaders understand this early. They don't demand clarity up front. They commit first, then adjust. They treat action as a probe, a test, a signal. Every step reveals something. Every move sharpens direction. Clarity follows action, not thought. Most people sit still and wonder why nothing becomes clear. That's like refusing to turn on the light and complaining that the room is dark. You have a choice. Fear loves uncertainty because uncertainty gives fear an excuse. If I don't know exactly what will happen, I shouldn't move. That sounds logical, but it's fear talking. It's not about intelligence, it's about discipline. Leaders don't wait for guarantees. They build certainty through engagement. That's the key. Here's the pattern that keeps people stuck. They think, they plan, they research, they hesitate. And every time they hesitate, clarity moves further away. Because clarity is a byproduct of exposure. You learn by doing. You refine by acting. You understand by engaging with reality. Stillness creates confusion. Movement creates information. You don't need their permission, and you don't need full understanding. You need commitment. Here's a hard truth most people avoid. If clarity came before action, no one would ever fail. But failure exists because clarity is earned during the process. That's the price, and it's a fair price. You have a choice. You can stay confused and safe, or uncertain and moving. Only one leads somewhere. Clarity follows action, not thought. Let's make this practical. Stop asking, what's the perfect decision? Start asking, what's the next step? That's the key. Not the final plan, not the full picture, the next step. Action creates feedback. Feedback creates adjustment. Adjustment creates clarity. This is how leaders navigate uncertainty. They don't freeze, they move intelligently. Most people want certainty before commitment. Leaders use commitment to create certainty. It's not about being reckless, it's about being responsive. You have a choice. Right now, there is something you're delaying: a conversation, a project, a change. You're telling yourself you need clarity. No, you need engagement. Clarity follows action, not thought. Here's the fear underneath the delay. What if I choose wrong? That fear assumes something dangerous, that action locks you in permanently. It doesn't. Inaction does. Action gives you options. Stillness removes them. That's the key. Self-leaders don't need perfect answers. They need momentum. Momentum reveals reality, and reality is the best teacher. You don't learn by observing life. You learn by participating in it. You have a choice. Let go of the fantasy of perfect clarity. There is no moment where everything suddenly makes sense. There is only movement and correction. Leaders are comfortable with correction. Ego hates correction. Discipline welcomes it. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Here's another truth most people avoid. Overthinking feels productive, but it produces nothing. It creates the illusion of progress without the risk. That's why it's addictive. But illusion does not build a life. Action does. Clarity follows action, not thought. If you feel stuck, it's not because you lack answers. It's because you're avoiding commitment. That's the key. Commitment does not mean forever. It means for now, for this step, for this experiment, for this direction. You move, you observe, you adjust. That's leadership. You have a choice. Right now, there is something you're delaying. A conversation, a project, a change. You're telling yourself you need clarity. No, you need engagement. Clarity follows action, not thought. Here's the fear underneath the delay. What if I choose wrong? That fear assumes something dangerous, that action locks you in permanently. It doesn't. Inaction does. Action gives you options. Stillness removes them. That's the key. Self-leaders don't need perfect answers. They need momentum. Momentum reveals reality, and reality is the best teacher. You don't learn by observing life. You learn by participating in it. You have a choice. Let go of the fantasy of perfect clarity. There is no moment where everything suddenly makes sense. There is only movement and correction. Leaders are comfortable with correction. Ego hates correction. Discipline welcomes it. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Here's another truth most people avoid. Overthinking feels productive, but it produces nothing. It creates the illusion of progress without the risk. That's why it's addictive. But illusion does not build a life. Action does. Clarity follows action, not thought. If you feel stuck, it's not because you lack answers. It's because you're avoiding commitment. That's the key. Commitment does not mean forever. It means for now, for this step, for this experiment, for this direction. You move, you observe, you adjust. That's leadership. You have a choice. Right now, there is something you're delaying. A conversation, a project, a change. You're telling yourself you need clarity. No, you need engagement. Clarity follows action, not thought. Here's the fear underneath the delay. What if I choose wrong? That fear assumes something dangerous, that action locks you in permanently. It doesn't. Inaction does. Action gives you options. Stillness removes them. That's the key. Self-leaders don't need perfect answers. They need momentum. Momentum reveals reality, and reality is the best teacher. You don't learn by observing life. You learn by participating in it. You have a choice. Let go of the fantasy of perfect clarity. There is no moment where everything suddenly makes sense. There is only movement and correction. Leaders are comfortable with correction. Ego hates correction. Discipline welcomes it. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Here's another truth most people avoid. Overthinking feels productive, but it produces nothing. It creates the illusion of progress without the risk. That's why it's addictive. But illusion does not build a life. Action does. Clarity follows action, not thought. If you feel stuck, it's not because you lack answers. It's because you're avoiding commitment. That's the key. Commitment does not mean forever. It means for now, for this step, for this experiment, for this direction. You move, you observe, you adjust. That's leadership. You have a choice. Right now, there is something you're delaying. A conversation, a project, a change. You're telling yourself you need clarity. No, you need engagement. Clarity follows action, not thought. Here's the fear underneath the delay. What if I choose wrong? That fear assumes something dangerous, that action locks you in permanently. It doesn't. Inaction does. Action gives you options. Stillness removes them. That's the key. Self-leaders don't need perfect answers. They need momentum. Momentum reveals reality,
and reality is the best teacher. You don't learn by observing life, you learn by participating in it. You have a choice. Let go of the fantasy of perfect clarity. There is no moment where everything suddenly makes sense. There is only movement and correction. Leaders are comfortable with correction. Ego hates correction. Discipline welcomes it. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Here's another truth most people avoid. Overthinking feels productive, but it produces nothing. It creates the illusion of progress without the risk. That's why it's addictive. But illusion does not build a life. Action does. Clarity follows action, not thought. If you feel stuck, it's not because you lack answers. It's because you're avoiding commitment. That's the key. Commitment does not mean forever. It means for now, for this step, for this experiment, for this direction. You move, you observe, you adjust. That's leadership. You have a choice. Right now, there is something you're delaying. A conversation, a project, a change. You're telling yourself you need clarity. No, you need engagement. Clarity follows action, not thought. Here's the fear underneath the delay. What if I choose wrong? That here assumes something dangerous, that action locks you in permanently. It doesn't. Inaction does. Action gives you options. Stillness removes them. That's the key.
Most people think their problem is time. They say they don't have enough of it. They say the day disappears. They say they're always behind. That's not the real problem. The real problem is energy. Burnout is not from effort. Burnout is from misaligned priorities. That's the key. You have a choice. You can keep managing time, or you can start leading your energy. One keeps you busy, the other makes you effective. Time is fixed, energy is not. And leaders understand this. Protect energy before managing time. Most people wake up already reactive. They check their phone, they absorb noise, they respond to demands. By the time they reach their real work, they're drained. Not because the work is hard, but because their energy was spent on the wrong things. That's the key. You don't get tired from doing what matters. You get tired from doing what doesn't. You have a choice. Right now, your energy is being taxed somewhere. Too many inputs, too many obligations, too many low-value decisions. And then you blame yourself for being exhausted. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Energy must be directed, not consumed. Leaders don't give their energy away randomly. They allocate it intentionally. Protect energy before managing time. Here's the truth most people avoid. You don't need more time, you need fewer drains. Burnout happens when effort is disconnected from purpose. When you work hard on things that don't move your life forward, your body rebels. That's not weakness, that's intelligence. Your system is telling you something. That's the key. Energy is information, and if you ignore it, it turns into exhaustion. You have a choice. You can keep pushing blindly, or you can realign. Realign priorities, realign focus, realign effort. Leaders do not try to do everything. They do the right things at the right times with full energy. Protect energy before managing time. Let's make this practical. Here's the first shift you must make. Stop treating all tasks as equal. They're not. Some tasks create momentum. Some tasks maintain systems. Some tasks just create noise. If you give them all equal energy, you dilute impact. That's the key. Leaders identify high-energy tasks, tasks that require focus, tasks that move the needle, tasks that build the future. Then they protect energy for those tasks. Not leftovers, not scraps, prime energy. You have a choice. Do important work when you're sharp, or do it when you're already exhausted. One builds progress, the other builds frustration. Most people reverse it. They waste their best energy on trivial things, then try to force important work with what's left. That's why they burn out. Protect energy before managing time. Another hard truth. Busyness is not productivity. Busyness is often avoidance. It feels good to be active. It feels responsible to be busy. But if you're busy without direction, you're just leaking energy. That's the key.
Leaders are not busy, they are deliberate. They know where their energy goes. You don't need their permission, you need alignment. Now let's talk about priorities. Priorities are not what you say matters, they're what you give energy to consistently. If you say something matters but never protect energy for it, it's a wish. You have a choice. Stop lying to yourself about what matters. Start aligning energy with truth. That alignment removes burnout, because when effort serves purpose, energy renews itself. That's the key. Here's another mistake most people make. They try to optimize time before stabilizing energy. They create schedules, they use planners, they build systems, but their energy is chaotic, so the systems collapse. Energy comes first. If your sleep is unstable, nothing else works. If your nutrition is chaotic, focus disappears. If your mind is overstimulated, clarity dies. It's not about time, it's about discipline. Protect energy before managing time. Leaders start with the basics: sleep, fuel, silence, recovery. Not because it's comfortable, but because it's strategic. Energy is the foundation. You have a choice. You can treat recovery like a luxury, or you can treat it like maintenance. Leaders choose maintenance because burnout doesn't make you strong, it makes you unreliable. That's the key. Now let's talk about reactive energy loss. Notifications, messages, interruptions. Every interruption forces a mental reset. That reset costs energy. You don't feel it immediately, you feel it later, when focus is gone. Leaders defend their attention. They don't let the world constantly tap them on the shoulder. You don't need their permission to be unavailable. You need discipline. Protect energy before managing time. Another truth: energy is emotional as much as physical. Unresolved conflict drains energy. People-pleasing drains energy. Lack of boundaries drains energy. If you say yes to everything, you bleed energy everywhere. That's not kindness, that's self-neglect. You have a choice. Set boundaries or accept burnout. Leaders choose boundaries, not aggressively, not emotionally. Calmly, clearly, because they respect their energy. That's the key. Let's bring this together. Energy leadership means three things. First, you identify what creates energy. Second, you eliminate what drains it. Third, you protect what matters most. Simple, not easy, but powerful. Protect energy before managing time. When you do this, something changes. You stop feeling scattered. You stop feeling resentful. You stop feeling constantly behind. Because your effort finally matches your values. You're not doing more, you're doing what matters. You have a choice. Lead your energy or let it be stolen. One creates momentum, the other creates burnout. And burnout is not a badge of honor. It's a signal of misalignment. Leaders listen to signals. They adjust, they refine, they lead themselves first. Protect energy before managing time. Now here's the transition. Listen carefully. You've stopped waiting for permission. You've built confidence through discipline. You've learned to command emotions. You've eliminated decision fatigue. You've raised private standards. You've stopped negotiating with weakness. You've designed your environment. You've learned that clarity follows action. You've learned to lead your energy, but there is still one lever that determines your entire future. Standards. What you accept, what you tolerate, what you enforce. Energy without standards leaks. Discipline without standards weakens. You've learned to protect your energy. Now you must decide how high your standards really are. That's the key.
Your life is not shaped by your goals. It is shaped by your standards. That's the truth most people avoid. Standards silently dictate outcomes. Not once, not occasionally, every day. Standards decide destinies. You have a choice. You can raise your standards, or you can lower your future. There is no third option. Most people think standards are preferences. They're not. Standards are rules. Rules you enforce or don't. And whatever you repeatedly accept becomes your identity. That's the key. Look at your life honestly. Your health, your work, your relationships, your focus. What do these areas reveal? Not what you want, not what you say you value, what you accept.
Because what you accept repeatedly becomes who you are. You have a choice. Most people don't fail dramatically. They decline gradually. They tolerate small things, a little laziness, a little distraction, a little inconsistency. And over time, those small tolerances compound into a life they don't recognize. Standards decide destinies. Here's the dangerous lie people believe. These small things don't matter. They do. Because standards are enforced in the small moments. How late you allow yourself to sleep, how much effort you allow yourself to give, how much disrespect you allow yourself to tolerate. That's where the future is decided. You don't rise to big moments, you fall to your standards. That's the key. Self-leaders understand this. They don't rely on motivation. They don't rely on pressure. They rely on non-negotiable standards. Standards that apply when it's easy, standards that apply when it's hard, standards that apply when no one is watching. You don't need their permission. You need to raise your standards. Here's the hard truth. If you keep accepting what you say you don't want, you are choosing it. Silence is agreement. Tolerance is endorsement. And endorsement shapes identity. You have a choice. Right now, there is something you are tolerating that you shouldn't. A habit, a behavior, a situation. You tell yourself it's temporary, but temporary tolerances become permanent identities. That's the key. Standards decide destinies. Let's get clear. A standard is not what you hope to do. A standard is what you do without debate. No negotiation, no exception. When the standard is clear, behavior follows. When the standard is vague, excuses take over. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Most people want a better future without becoming stricter with themselves. That never works. A higher future requires higher standards. You have a choice. Raise the standard or accept the outcome. There is no escaping this law. Now let's make this practical. Here's the behavioral shift. Stop asking, what do I feel like? Start asking, what is acceptable for the person I'm becoming? That's the key. Acceptable effort, acceptable focus, acceptable discipline. If you don't define what's acceptable, weakness will. And weakness has very low standards. Standards decide destinies. Here's another truth. Your standards train everyone around you. What you tolerate teaches people how to treat you. What you accept teaches your mind what's normal. If you accept mediocrity, mediocrity becomes familiar. If you accept discipline, discipline becomes automatic. You have a choice. And listen carefully, this matters. Raising standards does not mean doing more. It means allowing less. Less distraction, less inconsistency, less self-betrayal. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. You need to stop tolerating what weakens you. That's the key. Most people aim too low because low standards feel safe. High standards feel demanding, uncomfortable, lonely. But low standards are expensive. They cost you confidence. They cost you momentum. They cost you self-respect. Standards decide destinies. Self-leaders are willing to feel uncomfortable now to avoid being disappointed later. They raise the bar and then rise to meet it. You have a choice. Lower your standards to match your current behavior or raise your behavior to match your future self. One is easy, one is transformative. It's not about intensity, it's about consistency. High standards enforced daily beat rare heroic effort anytime. That's the key. Now here's where most people collapse. They set standards but don't enforce them. A standard without enforcement is a suggestion, and your weaker self ignores suggestions. Leadership means enforcement. Calm, consistent, immediate. When the standard is violated, you correct. No drama, no guilt, no story. You adjust and move forward. You don't need their permission. Standards decide destinies. Let's talk identity. You are not who you think you are. You are not who you claim to be. You are the sum of what you tolerate. That's uncomfortable, but it's empowering. Because the moment you change what you tolerate, you change who you are becoming. You have a choice. Stop tolerating inconsistency. Stop tolerating excuses. Stop tolerating low effort. Not with anger, with clarity. That's the key.
Here's the discipline test. Ask yourself this question. If everyone lived by my standards, what kind of world would this be? If the answer disappoints you, raise the standard, because leadership always starts with example, and you are always leading yourself. Standards decide destinies. Another truth. You don't need new goals. You need stricter rules. Rules about effort, rules about focus, rules about follow-through. Goals inspire, standards enforce, and enforcement is what creates change. You have a choice. In every moment, you are voting. A vote for strength or a vote for weakness. Votes compound, and eventually they become your life. Standards decide destinies. Now listen carefully to the transition. You've stopped waiting for permission. You've built confidence through discipline. You've learned to command emotions. You've eliminated decision fatigue. You've raised private standards. You've stopped negotiating with weakness. You've designed your environment. You've learned to clarity follows action. You've learned to lead your energy. You've learned to raise your standards. But there is one final threat to high standards. Distraction. Noise. Constant input. Endless reaction. You've raised the bar. Now you must learn how to protect focus. Because focus is the force that enforces standards. That's the key.
Most people think distraction is a personal flaw. It's not. Distraction is engineered. That's the key. Your attention is under constant attack. Apps are designed to pull you. Notifications are designed to interrupt you. Content is designed to keep you reacting. And if you don't defend your focus, someone else will control it. You have a choice. You can live distracted, or you can become harder to distract. One leads to shallow effort. The other leads to real power. Focus is a defensive skill. Most people try to add focus, more motivation, more discipline, more pressure. That's the wrong approach. Leaders don't add focus, they remove noise. That's the difference. Focus is not created by force, it is protected by design. You don't need their permission, you need boundaries. Here's the truth most people avoid. If you are constantly distracted, it's not because you're weak, it's because you are exposed. Exposed to too many inputs, too many alerts, too many low-value stimuli. And exposure always wins. That's the key. Distraction is not accidental, it is engineered. If you don't intentionally defend your attention, you will lose it by default. You have a choice. Right now, ask yourself this. How often is your focus broken? Every few minutes? Every notification? Every impulse to check? That fragmentation comes at a cost, a deep cost. Because focus is not just about productivity, it's about identity. What you focus on repeatedly becomes who you are. That's the key. Self-leaders understand this. They treat attention like a scarce resource. They guard it aggressively. They deploy it intentionally. Because focus is the force multiplier. With focus, effort compounds. Without focus, effort leaks. Focus is a defensive skill. Most people live in a reactive state. They respond before they decide. They check before they think. They react before they lead. And reaction feels busy, but produces nothing meaningful. You have a choice. You can keep reacting, or you can start directing. Leadership begins the moment you decide that not everything deserves your attention. You don't need their permission. Here's the behavioral shift you must make. Stop asking, how do I concentrate more? Start asking, what is stealing my focus? That's the key. Distraction is subtraction. Every interruption removes momentum. Every context switch drains energy. Every notification resets your mind. And resets are expensive. You don't feel it immediately. You feel it later, when clarity is gone. Focus is a defensive skill. Leaders build friction against distraction. They don't rely on willpower. They redesign their environment. Phone out of reach. Notifications turned off. Inputs scheduled, not constant. They make distraction inconvenient. That's leadership. You have a choice. Make focus easy or keep fighting yourself. Here's another truth most people miss. Distraction feels harmless in the moment, but over time it erodes confidence. Because when you can't focus, you stop trusting yourself. You start tasks and don't finish them. You plan and don't execute. You intend and then drift. And drift destroys self-respect. That's the key. Leaders finish what they start because they defend their attention. They don't let their mind wander everywhere. You have a choice. Allow constant interruption or enforce concentration. One weakens discipline, the other strengthens it. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Focus is not a personality trait, it's a practiced behavior. And like any behavior, it improves with structure. Distraction is not accidental, it is engineered. Which means focus must be engineered too. Engineered through rules, engineered through boundaries, engineered through elimination. You don't rise to focus, you fall to distraction, unless you defend against it. That's the key. Now let's talk about consumption. If you are always consuming, you are rarely creating. If you are always reacting, you are rarely leading. Leaders flip the ratio. They create more than they consume. They think more than they scroll. They act more than they react. You have a choice. Be informed and unfocused, or be selective and effective. Information overload kills clarity. Focus is a defensive skill. Here's a powerful question. Does this input make me stronger or noisier? If it makes you noisier, it doesn't belong in your life. That applies to content, conversations, commitments. Leaders are selective, not because they're better, but because they're disciplined. You don't need their permission. Now understand this. Becoming harder to distract will feel uncomfortable at first, because distraction is stimulating. Focus is quiet, and quiet feels unfamiliar to a distracted mind. But that discomfort is a sign that you're regaining control. That's the key. Focus builds momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence reinforces discipline. It all starts with defense. Focus is a defensive skill. Now here's the final truth of this chapter. If you don't protect your focus, you will never fully execute your standards. High standards require attention. Discipline requires concentration, and concentration requires defense. You have a choice. Allow constant interruption or enforce concentration. One weakens discipline, the other strengthens it. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Focus is not a personality trait, it's a practiced behavior. And like any behavior, it improves with structure. Distraction is not accidental, it is engineered, which means focus must be engineered too. Engineered through rules, engineered through boundaries, engineered through elimination. You don't rise to focus, you fall to distraction, unless you defend against it. That's the key. Now let's talk about consumption. If you are always consuming, you are rarely creating. If you are always reacting, you are rarely leading. Leaders flip the ratio. They create more than they consume. They think more than they scroll. They act more than they react. You have a choice. Be informed and unfocused, or be selective and effective. Information overload kills clarity. Focus is a defensive skill. Here's a powerful question. Does this input make me stronger or noisier? If it makes you noisier, it doesn't belong in your life. That applies to content, conversations, commitments. Leaders are selective, not because they're better, but because they're disciplined. You don't need their permission. Now understand this. Becoming harder to distract will feel uncomfortable at first, because distraction is stimulating, focus is quiet, and quiet feels unfamiliar to a distracted mind. But that discomfort is a sign that you're regaining control. That's the key. Focus builds momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence reinforces discipline. It all starts with defense. Focus is a defensive skill. Now here's the final truth of this chapter. If you don't protect your focus, you will never fully execute your standards. High standards require attention. Discipline requires concentration. And concentration requires defense. You have a choice. Allow constant interruption or enforce concentration. One weakens discipline, the other strengthens it. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Focus is not a personality trait, it's a practiced behavior. And like any behavior, it improves with structure. Distraction is not accidental, it is engineered. Which means focus must be engineered too. Engineered through rules, engineered through boundaries, engineered through elimination. You don't rise to focus, you fall to distraction, unless you defend against it. That's the key. Now let's talk about consumption. If you are always consuming, you are rarely creating. If you are always reacting, you are rarely leading. Leaders flip the ratio. They create more than they consume. They think more than they scroll. They act more than they react. You have a choice. Be informed and unfocused, or be selective and effective. Information overload kills clarity. Focus is a defensive skill. Here's a powerful question. Does this input make me stronger?
Every single action you take is teaching you something. Not occasionally, not on big days only, every day, every moment. That's the truth. You are always teaching yourself who you are, and the lesson is never neutral. Every action is a vote for identity. That's the key. You have a choice. You can teach yourself strength, or you can teach yourself avoidance. You can reinforce discipline, or you can reinforce excuses. There is no pause button. Even doing nothing teaches a lesson. Most people don't realize this. They think identity is shaped by big decisions, major milestones, life-changing moments. That's wrong. Identity is built in small actions. The tiny choices you make when no one is watching, the habits you repeat without thinking, the standards you enforce or don't. Every action is a vote for identity. Look at your life right now. Who are you becoming? Not who you want to be, not who you say you are, who your actions are training you to be. That's the key. Every time you do the hard thing, you teach yourself, I can be trusted. Every time you avoid it, you teach yourself, I escape when it's uncomfortable, and your mind learns fast. You have a choice. Most people live on autopilot. They act, they react, they repeat. And slowly, unconsciously, they train an identity they don't like. Weakness is rarely intentional. It's reinforced. That's the key. Leaders are intentional about the lessons they teach themselves. They don't leave identity to chance. They ask a powerful question in every moment. What am I reinforcing right now? Because every action is a vote for identity. You don't need their permission. You need awareness. Here's the hard truth. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You sink to the level of your identity. And identity is shaped by behavior, not affirmations, not intentions, behavior. It's not about flaw. It's about discipline. Most people wait for identity to change before they act. I'll act confident once I feel confident. I'll be disciplined once I feel disciplined. That never works. Action comes first. Identity follows.
Every action is a vote for identity. Leaders understand this. They don't wait to feel like leaders. They act like leaders, especially when it's uncomfortable. And over time, the identity catches up. You have a choice. Right now, there is a behavior you repeat that is teaching you the wrong lesson. Skipping workouts, avoiding conversations, breaking promises to yourself. Each time you do it, you are not just skipping a task, you are reinforcing a belief that says, I don't follow through. That belief becomes identity. That's the key. On the other hand, small disciplined actions teach powerful lessons. Showing up when it's inconvenient, finishing what you start, doing the work without applause. Those actions teach your mind something different. They say, I am reliable, I am disciplined, I can be trusted. Every action is a vote for identity, and identity is destiny in slow motion. You have a choice. This is where self-leadership becomes permanent, not through motivation, not through pressure, through conscious repetition. Leaders choose actions not just for results, but for the identity they reinforce. They ask, who does this action make me? That's the key. Let's make this practical. From now on, you operate with one rule. Before you act or avoid, ask this. What does this teach me about who I am? If the answer weakens your identity, you don't do it. If the answer strengthens it, you act immediately. No negotiation. Every action is a vote for identity. This changes everything. The workout is no longer about fitness. It's about being someone who keeps commitments. The focused work session is no longer about productivity. It's about being someone who finishes. The difficult conversation is no longer about comfort. It's about being someone who faces reality. You don't need their permission. You are training yourself. Most people train weakness without realizing it. They practice quitting. They practice avoidance. They practice distraction. And practice makes permanent. That's the key. Leaders practice strength. Not perfectly, but consistently. They understand that identity is built like a muscle. Repetition, resistance, recovery. You have a choice. Stop seeing actions as isolated events. Start seeing them as identity training sessions, because that's what they are. Every action is a vote for identity. Here's another truth most people avoid. You don't need to overhaul your life. You need to stop casting votes for the wrong identity. One disciplined action per day is enough to begin the shift. One kept promise, one completed task, one moment of follow-through. Identity compounds fast, because your mind is always watching. It's always asking, can I trust this person? And it answers based on evidence. Behavior is evidence. That's the key. You have a choice. Give your mind proof of strength, or keep feeding it proof of avoidance. Only one leads to self-respect. Only one leads to leadership. Every action is a vote for identity. Now let's address a mistake people make. They think one bad day ruins everything. It doesn't. What matters is not perfection. What matters is the direction of repetition. One bad vote doesn't decide identity. Repeated votes do. That's the key. Leaders don't panic after a mistake. They correct quickly. They get back to casting votes for strength. No drama, no guilt, no story. Correction is leadership. You don't need their permission. Here's the final truth of this chapter. Your future self is not built by motivation. It is built by what you repeatedly practice today. You are teaching yourself something right now. The only question is what? Strength or avoidance? Discipline or excuse? Leadership or delay? You have a choice. And now that you see this clearly, you can no longer claim ignorance. Every action is a vote for identity. Cast your votes carefully, because identity becomes habit, habit becomes character, and character becomes destiny. That's the key. Now listen carefully to the transition. You've learned to stop waiting for permission. You've built confidence through discipline. You've learned to command emotions. You've eliminated decision fatigue. You've raised private standards. You've stopped negotiating with weakness. You've designed your environment. You've learned that clarity follows action.
You've learned to lead your energy. You've raised your standards. You've defended your focus. You've learned that every action shapes identity. There is only one final question left, one that defines true self-leadership. Are you becoming someone you would follow? That's the ultimate test. And that is where this journey ends and real leadership begins.
Most people quit too early, not because the work is too hard, not because they aren't capable. They quit because it gets lonely. That's the truth. The path of discipline often isolates before it elevates, and if you are not prepared for that loneliness, you will sabotage yourself just to feel accepted again. That's the key. You have a choice. You can lead yourself and feel misunderstood for a while, or you can stay comfortable and remain average forever. There is no version of self-leadership that is immediately applauded. Respect follows proof. Most people want validation before results. They want encouragement before consistency, support before standards, approval before effort. That never happens. Leadership is not voted in, it is proven, and proof takes time. You have a choice. When you change, people notice, but not in the way you expect. They don't applaud, they question. They don't support, they observe. They don't say, "I'm proud of you." They say, "Why are you doing this?" That's the test. The moment you stop explaining yourself is the moment self-leadership begins. You don't need their permission. The lonely phase is not punishment, it is filtering. It filters out people who only liked you when you were predictable. It filters out habits that depended on weakness. It filters out identities that no longer fit. That's the key. Self-leaders understand this. They don't interpret loneliness as failure. They interpret it as transition. You are leaving one version of yourself before the next one is fully built. Of course it feels empty. Respect follows proof. Most people cannot tolerate this phase. They go back to old behaviors just to feel connected again. They laugh at jokes they've outgrown. They join conversations they no longer respect. They lower standards to avoid standing out. And in doing so, they abandon themselves. You have a choice: temporary loneliness or permanent self-betrayal. One costs comfort now, the other costs your future. That's the key. Let's be clear. When you start waking up earlier, training harder, working with focus, saying no more often, people notice, but they don't know how to process it. Your discipline exposes their avoidance, and instead of rising to your level, they try to pull you back to theirs. Not maliciously, subconsciously. That's why self-leadership feels isolating. Not because you are better, but because you are different. Respect follows proof. Leaders don't demand respect. They outlast doubt. They let results speak. You don't need their permission. Here's the behavior change you must make. Stop explaining your discipline. Explanation is a form of seeking approval. If you have to justify your standards, you haven't fully committed to them yet. That's the key. Self-leaders move quietly. They don't announce changes. They don't seek reassurance. They don't negotiate their growth. They execute, and they let time do the talking. Respect follows proof. Another truth most people avoid. The lonely phase is where identity solidifies. When no one is cheering, you find out who you really are. Do you still show up? Do you still execute? Do you still hold the line? That's where leaders are made. Anyone can perform when supported. Leaders perform when unsupported. You have a choice. Let isolation break you or let it sharpen you. One weakens, the other forges. That's the key. Here's what's really happening during this phase. You are detaching from external validation, and that is uncomfortable.
Because validation has been your fuel for years. Praise, likes, agreement. Now it's gone. And in that silence, you must learn a new fuel source. Internal standards, self-respect, discipline. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Respect follows proof. Most people never reach this phase because they quit when approval disappears. They mistake silence for rejection. It's not rejection, it's neutrality. The world is waiting to see if you're serious. You have a choice. Keep going without applause, or stop and stay familiar. Only one leads to respect. Now let's talk about timing. Respect is delayed. Always. No one respects effort in real time. They respect results in hindsight. They respect consistency they didn't expect, discipline that didn't fade, standards that didn't bend. That's the key. People watch quietly. They say nothing. And then one day the tone changes. Questions replace criticism. Curiosity replaces doubt. Silence becomes respect. But only if you lasted long enough. Respect follows proof. Here's the trap. If you start performing for respect, you'll abandon discipline the moment it's not returned. True self-leadership means acting without guarantees. You do the work whether respect comes or not. That's leadership. You don't need their permission. Let's make this practical. During this lonely phase, you do 3 things. First, reduce unnecessary social noise. Less explaining, less defending, less reacting. Second, double down on standards. Loneliness is not a reason to lower them. Third, document progress privately, not to show others, to remind yourself. That's the key. Self-leaders validate themselves first, and that self-validation becomes unshakable. You have a choice. Seek belonging now or build respect later. Both feel good, but not at the same time. Respect follows proof. Here's another truth. Some people will never support the version of you that outgrows them. That doesn't make them bad, it makes growth real. You don't need to cut them off, you need to stop shrinking for them. Leadership is not loud, it's consistent. And consistency always creates distance before it creates admiration. That's the price, and it's worth paying. You have a choice. Be understood today or be respected tomorrow. Only one builds a life you're proud of. Respect follows proof. Now listen carefully. If you feel lonely right now, that doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It often means you're doing something right. You're no longer blending in. You're no longer performing. You're no longer negotiating standards. That's leadership. And leadership always starts alone. Before the results, before the recognition, before the respect. You don't need their permission. You need patience. You need discipline. You need proof. Respect follows proof. Now here's the transition. Pay attention. You've learned to stop waiting for permission. You've built confidence through discipline. You've learned to command emotions. You've eliminated decision fatigue. You've raised private standards. You've stopped negotiating with weakness. You've designed your environment. You've learned that clarity follows action. You've learned to lead your energy. You've raised your standards. You've defended your focus. You've shaped your identity. And now you understand the cost of self-leadership. But there is one final danger. You think this is a temporary work. You think discipline is a phase. It's not. Self-leadership is not something you achieve. It is something you maintain. That's the key.
Most people are obsessed with goals. Big goals, ambitious goals, emotional goals. They talk about what they want, they visualize outcomes, they imagine futures, and then they wonder why nothing changes. Here's the truth. You do not rise to goals, you fall to systems. That's the key. Goals inspire, systems sustain. Motivation might get you started, but systems are what carry you when motivation dies. And motivation always dies. You have a choice. You can keep chasing motivation, or you can build systems that don't require it. One leads to inconsistency, the other leads to inevitability. Systems carry you when motivation dies. Most people fail not because their goals are too small. They fail because their systems are weak. They rely on feeling good, feeling inspired, feeling ready. That's not leadership. Leadership is structure. You don't need their permission. You need a system. Let's be clear. Goals are destinations. Systems are vehicles. You can want to go anywhere in the world. Without a vehicle, you go nowhere. That's the key. Self-leaders understand this. They stop obsessing over distant outcomes. They obsess over daily structure. What happens every morning? What happens every evening? What happens when things go wrong? Because life is lived in days, not dreams. You have a choice. Design your days or let your days design you. One is leadership, the other is drift. Systems carry you when motivation dies. Here's where most people get confused. They think systems are restrictive, boring, limiting. They're wrong. Systems are freeing. Because once a system is in place, you no longer rely on willpower. You don't ask, should I? You already know. The system decides. That's the key. Goals require constant emotional energy. Systems require initial discipline, then run automatically. Leaders invest discipline once so they don't have to fight themselves every day. You have a choice. Fight yourself daily or build systems that remove the fight. Most people choose the fight because they don't want to commit. Commitment feels scary, but chaos is more expensive. Systems carry you when motivation dies. Here's the brutal truth. If your success depends on motivation, it is fragile. Motivation fluctuates, energy dips, life interrupts. Systems don't care. They show up anyway. That's leadership. It's not about flaw, it's about discipline. Self-leaders don't ask, how do I feel today? They ask, what does the system require? And then they execute. You don't need their permission. Let's make this practical. Here is the shift you must make. Stop setting outcome-only goals. Start building process-based systems. Instead of, I want to be in great shape, you build, I train at the same time on the same days every week. Instead of, I want to be successful, you build, I work on my highest value task first every day, no exceptions. That's the key. Systems turn ambition into behavior. Without systems, goals stay fantasies. You have a choice. Dream bigger or build better systems. Only one creates results. Systems carry you when motivation dies. Another truth most people avoid. The best systems are boring, repetitive, predictable, unexciting. That's why they work. Boring systems remove drama. Drama drains energy. Leaders eliminate drama. They simplify. Same routines, same triggers, same structure. Not because they lack creativity, but because they respect momentum. That's the key. Most people overcomplicate their lives. Too many goals, too many plans, too many changes, and nothing sticks. Leaders do the opposite. They reduce, they refine, they repeat. You don't need their permission. You need fewer systems, but better enforced. Now listen carefully. A system only works if it is enforced. A system you ignore is just an idea. Leadership means enforcement. Calm, consistent, immediate. If the system says train, you train. If the system says focus, you focus. No negotiation. Systems carry you when motivation dies. Here's another critical truth. You don't need a system for everything.
You need systems for the few things that matter most: health, focus, work, recovery. Get those right, and everything else becomes easier. You have a choice: micromanage everything or systematize the essentials. Leaders choose essentials because essentials compound. That's the key. Let's talk about failure. Systems don't fail because of one bad day. They fail because people abandon them. Leaders don't abandon systems after mistakes. They return to them immediately. No guilt, no story, no emotional spiral. Correction is part of the system. That's leadership. You don't need their permission. Here's a powerful reframe. A system is not a prison, it's a safety net. On bad days, the system catches you. On good days, the system channels you. Either way, you move forward. Goals don't do that. Systems disappear on bad days. Systems remain. Systems carry you when motivation dies. Most people think discipline means pushing harder. It doesn't. Discipline means designing smarter, so that even on low-energy days, progress still happens. Small, consistent, automatic. That's the key. Now let's bring this together. If your life feels unstable, it's because your systems are unstable. If your progress feels inconsistent, it's because your systems are inconsistent. Fix the systems and behavior follows. You have a choice. Keep chasing outcomes or start building structures. One keeps you emotional, the other makes you inevitable. Systems carry you when motivation dies. Here's your assignment. Choose one area of your life that matters most right now. Not 5, 1. And build a simple system. Clear trigger, clear action, clear time. Then enforce it. No emotion, no debate. Just execution. That's leadership. You don't need their permission. And here's the final truth of this chapter. The people you admire are not more motivated than you. They are more structured. They don't rise when they feel inspired. They move because the system says it's time. And that's why they win consistently. You have a choice. Live emotionally or live structurally. One is exhausting, the other is powerful. Systems carry you when motivation dies. Now listen carefully to the transition. You've stopped waiting for permission. You've built confidence through discipline. You've learned to command emotions. You've eliminated decision fatigue. You've raised private standards. You've stopped negotiating with weakness. You've designed your environment. You've learned that clarity follows action. You've learned to lead your energy. You've raised your standards. You've defended your focus. You've shaped your identity. You've accepted the loneliness of self-leadership. And now you understand the power of systems. There is only one chapter left, the final test of self-leadership. Can you become the example you would actually follow every single day? That's the key.
Everything you've heard so far leads here. This is the final test, not of knowledge, not of motivation, but of integrity. True leadership begins with personal integrity. That's the truth. Leadership is not what you say. It's not what you know. It's not what you intend. Leadership is what you demonstrate every day. Lead the example you demand. You have a choice. You can expect more from others than you expect from yourself, or you can become the standard. Only one creates real authority. Most people want to lead without being led by their own standards. They want discipline in others, commitment in others, consistency in others, but they don't enforce it in themselves. That's not leadership. That's entitlement. If you wouldn't follow your own habits, change them. That's the key. Let's be clear. You are already leading someone. Even if no one is watching, even if no one has named you a leader, you are leading yourself. And the question is simple. Would you follow you? Would you follow your consistency, your discipline, your standards under pressure? Or would you lose trust? You have a choice. Most people avoid this question because they already know the answer, and that answer is uncomfortable. But discomfort is the entry point to growth. True leadership begins with personal integrity. Integrity is alignment. Alignment between what you say matters and what you actually do when it costs you something. Anyone can lead when it's easy. Anyone can perform when it's convenient. Leaders show up when it's uncomfortable. That's the difference. Lead the example you demand. Here's the hard truth. You cannot demand discipline if you excuse your own inconsistency. You cannot demand focus if you live distracted. You cannot demand honesty if you lie to yourself. Authority does not come from words. It comes from congruence. You have a choice. Become congruent or accept quiet self-doubt. Because your mind knows. It always knows. Every time you violate your own standard, you weaken your internal authority. Every time you honor it, you strengthen it. Every action is a vote for identity, and identity is what people follow. If you wouldn't follow your own habits, change them. That's the key. Leadership is not about perfection. You will fail. You will slip. You will have bad days. Integrity is not about never falling. It's about how quickly you correct. Do you make excuses, or do you take responsibility? Do you rationalize weakness, or do you recommit? Leaders correct fast. No drama, no guilt, no story. Correction is leadership. You have a choice. Most people try to inspire others before they've proven themselves. They talk about discipline, but don't live it. They talk about growth, but resist discomfort. That disconnect destroys trust, even if no one says it out loud. Lead the example you demand. Here's the shift you must make. Stop asking, how do I lead others? Start asking, am I worth following today? That's the key. Leadership is not a title. It's a daily audition, and the only judge that matters is your future self. Would your future self respect the way you handled today? That question should guide every decision. You have a choice. Most people separate identity from behavior. They say, that's not who I really am. But behavior is who you are repeated. Intentions don't lead. Habits do. If you wouldn't follow your own habits, change them. Not tomorrow, not gradually, deliberately. True leadership begins with personal integrity. Let's make this practical. From this moment forward, you live by one rule. Never demand from yourself what you are unwilling to enforce. That applies to discipline, focus, effort, honesty, standards. No double standards. You are not special. You are accountable. That's leadership. You don't need their permission. Here's another truth most people avoid. People don't follow potential. They follow proof. They follow consistency. They follow reliability. They follow clarity. And clarity comes from living by example. You don't convince people, you show them. Lead the example you demand, even if no one notices it first. Especially then, because leadership is forged in private. You have a choice. Do the work when it's visible, or do the work when it's invisible. Only one builds real authority. Let's talk about self-respect. Self-respect is the foundation of leadership, and self-respect comes from one thing: keeping your word to yourself. If you don't trust yourself, no one else ever truly will, even if they say they do. That's the key. So ask yourself honestly, do you follow through? Do you show up? Do you enforce your standards? If not, don't feel ashamed. Feel responsible. Responsibility is power, and power is built through action. If you wouldn't follow your own habits, change them. Here's the final truth of this chapter. Leadership is not something you become one day. It is something you practice every day. In how you wake up, in how you work, in how you respond under pressure, in how you recover from failure. You are always modeling something: strength or weakness, discipline or excuse, integrity or convenience. You have a choice, and now, after everything you've heard, that choice is no longer unclear. This audiobook was not meant to motivate you. It was meant to confront you, to strip away excuses, to raise standards, to force honesty. Because the world does not need more talkers. It needs people who can lead themselves. Lead the example you demand. And here is the final challenge. For the next 30 days, live as if someone is watching, not to impress them, but to test yourself. Would you follow the way you live? Would you trust the way you decide? Would you respect the way you respond? If the answer is no, change it immediately. Because leadership does not start with others. It starts with you. And if you lead yourself well, everything else will follow. That's the key. End of audiobook.
You now understand the truth most people avoid. Your life is a direct reflection of how well you lead yourself. Not how inspired you feel, not how much potential you have, but how consistently you act when it is uncomfortable. Leadership starts alone. It starts without applause. It starts with discipline, standards, and self-command. So here is the challenge. Listen carefully. For the next 30 days, stop asking how you feel. Ask what the leader version of you would do. Then do it immediately. No negotiation, no delay. Because when you lead yourself first, everything else follows. Now go prove it to yourself.
It's a great read, actually.
Oh, I've heard this about it. Oh, I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, it really makes you think.